Awesome. So we're here with three representatives from the Allegra Chamber Orchestra, based in Vancouver. We've got Janna Sailor, the co-founder, artistic director, and we've got Louise Lee and Aaron James, who are both, been performing with the orchestra. My first question, I'll start with Janna, and then maybe we can kind of have as a round table. But kind of the lead-off question for everyone in this series has been, we have a huge country geographically, also culturally. There's just so much diversity. In your experience, is there anything in particular that you notice about Western Canada, about the prairies? And Janna, I know you're from Saskatchewan originally. You're in Vancouver, so you've been in a few different provinces, worked with maybe a few different communities. Do you find there's anything in particular that's that's unique to British Columbia's classical music scene or the prairies?
Thanks, Keith. Sure. Yeah. So I kind of came of age, I guess you could say, as a musician in Vancouver, and largely in part thanks to the musical community and the experimental and new music communities in Vancouver, which I was really fortunate to be immersed in right out of school. And so there's a great kind of hub of creatives and composers that are just fearlessly creative in Vancouver, that are always experimenting and kind of drawing upon the unique culture of the West Coast. I feel like Vancouver is a leader in a lot of ways, as far as the beginning stages of reconciliation and environmental awareness and sustainability, and that's very much impacts a lot of the artistic output and creativity that is unique to Vancouver, and a lot of awareness of the land. We're surrounded by ocean and forest and mountains, and a lot of that, whether I guess we're aware of it or not, I think influences our creative output, and we have these amazing opportunities to just step outside the city and into just an incredible landscape. And so I feel like I was really fortunate to kind of jump in with some of these experimental and new music and world music influences early on, and everyone in my circle was creating something unique to them and to their community, and that was really outside the box, and really encouraged me to create my own projects, and to know that I would be supported, that there would be a community around me that would jump on board to both participate and co-create with me. In so that resulted in a number of projects. First, my harp and violin duo, and then ultimately Allegra Chamber Orchestra evolved out of kind of some experiments with my own concert series and my own duos and other ensembles.
Awesome. Sounds great. Sounds like, yeah, you've find a lot of community and a lot of kind of overlapping, interesting art and music that's happening. Maybe I'll just kind of actually move over to Aaron for a minute. Aaron, I know you've had a lot of experiences performing and studying in Europe. Just wondering if you had any thoughts on classical music, traditions, education, performance, in contrast with your experiences in Canada versus UK and Europe.
Yeah, great question. Made me think. Yeah, I mean, I think I would actually probably build on what Janna has said about just the setting of Vancouver, and sort of how that enables sort of a more creative and diverse approach. And I have to say, it was 2011 when I graduated from college in London. So it's been a while since I've been there. But I do think that Canada, and Louise, you may disagree with me here because you're from Britain originally, but I do feel that Canada is sort of a bit further ahead in terms of really talking about and valuing diversity, as well as sort of some of the themes of even leaving sort of a class system behind. I think that I found my education in the UK was still a little bit entrenched in that, which was really interesting coming in as a Canadian who, you know, we still have our issues in Canada, but I think that there is a lot more sort of thought and maybe even focus on kind of looking at those things and you know, finding value in the different voices. So Louise, I hope I didn't step on your toes too much as a Brit, but
Sure,
that was sort
great.
of my sense. Yeah.
Yeah, really interesting. And maybe Louise, do you have anything to add to this sort of conversation, either about Western Canada or Canada versus United Kingdom, Europe?
Erin, I completely agree with what you're saying there. One of the things I noticed, so I did the shift the other way, Keith. Originally, I was born in London, England. I grew up there, and I have only been in Vancouver really for the last 14 years. So the majority of my life I'm still on that side of the tipping point, was spent in England. And I completely agree with what Erin's saying. When I moved here to Vancouver, the running joke was I found the music community before I found any form of like other income employment type situation, because I just really wanted to immerse myself in that community to see what it was like, especially compared to London. And one of the things that I really noticed, connected to what Erin was saying about the class system, is that over here people seem to be a lot more open, shall we say, to the fluidity of what we can achieve and who we are achieving that with and our backgrounds. So for example, I technically do not, this is where I kind of out myself, I technically do not have a music degree, but nobody seems to care over here. Right? In London, there's a certain amount of status that you need to have, or you're expected to have. But over here, it wasn't a problem. People wanted to play with me. They invited me to join their community orchestras. They invited me to find their professional orchestras, ensembles all over the place. And I find that to this day that I get invited to play with all sorts of people at all sorts of levels. And it just seems so open, both in mind and in heart, which I think allows for really great collaboration here and a very, very enjoyable experience.
That's awesome. Great. Well, thanks for all of your insights. Yeah, that's a really interesting way of seeing it. And that Vancouver, Canada, but also Vancouver specifically can be such a hotbed for just musical connections, musical conversations that have a lot to do with kind of, I don't know, individual experience and less to do with maybe status or maybe a presupposed sort of way of doing things. And maybe on that note, I can go back to Janna. Sorry, I think I mispronounced your name first time around, so I apologize for that. Okay. But I'd love to just get into the Allegra Chamber Orchestra now. Maybe we can talk about some of the origins, maybe some of the inspirations. Were there existing organizations that you based this off of? So yeah, I'd love to hear some about how it got started.
Sure thing. Well, first off, I had no intention of starting an orchestra. It kind of happened by accident, oddly enough. So I was at a point in my career where I was transitioning into conducting full time, and coming up against a lot of those issues that apparently you encounter as a female conductor, and in the orchestral world, and coming up against some of those the traditions and mindsets, and some of the issues around gender and race that you encounter if you are any kind of minority coming into a position of leadership and authority. And to be honest, it was pretty heartbreaking. It was pretty demoralizing, and I wasn't. It wasn't enough for me at that point. After a few years of kind of doing the circuit, I didn't want to be in the industry anymore. It wasn't enough to just have a gig to get another gig to get a bigger gig to to get a bit to get I don't know, more of the same, I guess, of notoriety or a lack of, or the struggles that came along with it, and I was really discouraged. And so anyways, I wanted to do something I was at the verge of either leaving the music industry altogether or what have you, kind of at that point of decision making. And but I went out for coffee with a friend of mine who founded an amazing charity called Music Heals, which is an organization that works with schools, care homes, community organizations, and individuals to go in and create a custom music therapy program designed for their clientele and their needs. And I was just so moved by their work, having experienced firsthand the power of music therapy through my work at the St. James Sistema School in Vancouver, that I thought, I really want to just do something and support and gesture of help and see if we can raise a little bit of money and a little bit of awareness about the amazing work that they do. So I put out a call to my colleagues, just saying, it's the end of the season, let's just get together and play some beautiful music and raise some money for a great cause. What do you say? And I had such an outpouring of support. And it was all women. And I realized that this was way more than, a chamber group or a Mendelssohn octet, that if we, just grabbed some timpani and, one more trumpet player, we would actually have an orchestra. So it kind of took off from there. And after our first rehearsal, it was kind of apparent that this was a thing that needed to continue, that it was right at the height of the Me Too movement in 2016 when we founded, and there were a lot of things going on in the music community, in the music scene, that were really unsettling, really, and having to do with gender, having to do with minorities, that really were stifling our creativity as artists, as women. And we just wanted to get together in a safe space and just be women and just create and just focus on the music. And our motto is women helping women through music. So a portion of all of our self-produced concerts for the public, a portion of that automatically goes to a charitable cause, whether that is continuing to support our music therapy program that we assisted with raising seed funds for, or we've also donated to the Give a Home immigration organization, mental health, and also environmental causes. So every self-produced concert has a social action mandate, and our goal is to not only present an artistically and musically excellent and thought-provoking presentation, but also to give back in a practical way, through monetary support and also raising the visibility of these organizations that are doing great work in our communities to create more of the world and the community that we would all like to live in and see and participate in.
Wow, great! Thank you so much, Janna. It's the fact that you were at that point where you felt like you were wanting to give up on the industry because of just the way it was and the positions you were put in, and then how you flipped that on its head. I think one kind of theme that has been coming up in a few of these other interviews too is sort of connections when great connections forge great music. It's almost inevitable, rather than sort of, hey, it has to be, here's what it has to be. We're going to grab random people from random places and sort of force them into this situation, but rather kind of that opposite way. So it's so amazing that like an orchestra sort of blossomed out of what kind of seemed to start as like an organic coming together of women and of friends and of musicians. Maybe I can just go to I'll go back to Aaron now, and I'll ask both Aaron and Louise. How about your involvement in the chamber orchestra? What are some of the things that you've maybe first of all, how did you get involved, and what are some of your favorite things about it? What's some observations that you've made? I'll start with Aaron.
Well, it's interesting you talk about connections and how things are built through that. Janna and I have been friends now for years and years and years. How many years? I don't even know, like over 15 maybe. It's kind of scary. So I think it very much is in the spirit of that I've had just such a wonderful experience with Allegra, and also other colleagues that I've known for years. And I guess since I was away, I was in the UK, and then I was in Edmonton for a while. So I actually haven't started working with the orchestra until more recently. But I worked on the Festival project and on there's a program coming up around mental health that we did sort of a read through run through of, which is a really exciting project. And then Janna and I just came back from a residency in Banff. Sorry, I live right on Bloor Street, so. And all three of those projects, Hearing Voices, yeah. So all three of those projects have just been extremely rewarding. I think, yeah, partly because of just the atmosphere created by women supporting women, and that is very sort of, yeah, I would say the presence, the atmosphere of what working in the orchestra is like, and that's in contrast to a lot of other orchestras that I've been a part of. And I think also, yeah, like Janna is very intentional about what she programs, and it's not only the environment, but it's the repertoire itself, which is, you know, along those lines as well, to look for connection and community building, really, which I think is such an important thing. And so it's just been really, every single time has been extremely rewarding to be part of the orchestra.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I think Janna's going to leave for a second, but maybe I'll go to Louise to same question for you about your involvement and maybe some observations, some of the things that you've enjoyed about the orchestra.
Oh, so many things, Keith. When I share with friends, especially friends outside of the music community, about what I'm up to, without a doubt, every single time when I talk about something I'm doing with Allegra, their eyes just light up. Because they're like, oh my God, that seems so interesting, or oh, that's good, or oh wow, I'm really glad somebody's doing that. And so when I think about Allegra, or even when Janna mentioned it to me and invited me to come and play with the orchestra a number of years ago, I was thinking, oh, I have to admit, Keith, the first thing I thought was, yes, all female, all women, yeah, because I get a real kick out of that, as you can tell. That Janna's mentioned this already, but there is something about working completely with a whole ensemble of women. There is an unspoken connection, an unspoken background of relatedness that we share that you just don't get in other communities necessarily. And so that in itself is very special for me. Getting to play with fantastic musicians that otherwise I may not have a chance to play with is phenomenal. And I don't just mean the people within the orchestra. Over the years, we have collaborated with amazing people outside of the music community as well. So for example, we did an event with the head of various companies who are women owning female women-owned businesses. So these are entrepreneurs in the business world, in the corporate world, selling products unrelated to music, but they are all female, they're women, and they are there to make a difference to the community. And so I love the fact that Allegra partners with people outside of music, using music as a way to showcase and help heal and to transport people to different places. And Erin's touched upon this as well. One of the things that I love about working with Janna is how intentional she is on who she works with, what she programs, the message we are always trying to send. With Allegra, more than any other ensemble I play with, I am always very clear, very aware of why we are doing this piece, why we are working with these composers, what the messages we're trying to send overall about this topic, but about things in general for our society. And so to feel as though you are part of something bigger and so important, I think it's one of the key things that I love about Allegra, because I really do believe that where we are right now in the universe, I'm sure every generation says this, but we're at a tipping point, you know, that with the things that have happened that we have seen globally over just even the last 5 to 8 years, which would never have happened generations before, I feel as though we have a responsibility to speak up and to share and to raise awareness about certain issues that haven't been spoken about for multiple generations. And so to get to be part of that is really rewarding.
Wonderful. Thanks, Louise. Yeah, I think, just hearing about the common experience you all have as women working together, that as kind of a baseline that seems to go through the orchestra, giving that sense of common purpose, togetherness, and also in the world of classical music, speaking about direct social action, speaking about intention. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense in a social way, but also in a musical way too, because we all want to play music. We're all musicians, and we all want to play with purpose. Great. And on that note, let's talk about music. I just wanted to say, I've been watching videos of Festival, and I'm just blown away by the presentation, and even even before we get into the music, just on the technical level. Of course, the classical music community is one of many, or the industry is one of many that's been hit hard by COVID, and not to talk too much about the pandemic, but this idea of in-person stage experience. Then, everyone tried to figure out, how are we going to do this online? How are we going to make it work? And I've been a part of a few of these. I've seen many, and they range at, even at worst, it's like, hey, we're trying, we're still getting it out there. It's still recording. Maybe it's going to be like a phone camera quality, But with Festival, it was like, it wasn't just like you were making do. It was like it's an elevated level of seeing this as a video experience. So I thought it was just really impressive. The camera work, the quality of the video and audio, and also how that related to the pieces. After seeing them, I was like, I don't think, well, they would work as music and a stage experience, but it's written into the piece, the video experience. So that was some of the things I got as a viewer. Maybe I can go back to Janna here and talk about Festival, and also the pieces that were both done for Festival in general and also for the mentorship program, and how you prepared these as a video experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess this was one of the unexpected blessings of COVID, is that, it really allowed us to expand our skills and reach a whole new audience through this new platform that we otherwise wouldn't have explored, because, well, for one thing, it's hella expensive. But also, I've experienced over the years that everything that we did, just being the nature of the work that we did, and that everything we put out there was always put under a microscope, and we were just analyzed just a little bit more harshly than perhaps more mainstream ensembles, perhaps because of the nature of what we did. I'd hear comments is like, sure, they have a social action mandate, but can they actually play? Things like that. Sure, they're all women, but is it actually a professional orchestra? And because I draw my players, we do a diverse range of things, and so I draw my players from all kinds of communities that are the best fit for whatever that project is. And so I knew that if we put anything out there, it had to be excellent. And I don't want to put anything out there that would draw attention to ourselves in the wrong kind of way. So that being said, I feel really fortunate that we were able to partner with Opus 59 Films. I'm very careful who we collaborate with, just based on the nature of the work that we do, and sometimes the topics that we touch on are sensitive, and it has to be someone that they're a team player, and they're like-minded with the mandate of the orchestra and what we are trying to achieve. and work together with us in an artistic but also a respectful way. So I felt really fortunate that that was a true partnership with Opus 59 Films. And another thing that was kind of unique to this project is that we knew that it would be live streamed when, well in advance, like a year out. So we could kind of build that into the production value. And not that I wanted the composers to be influenced by that, through their compositional process, but I think that they did give, some really great thought into how they wanted things to be staged. Like there's the Tea Time Stories with Sasha, she very, thoughtfully curated. Not too many, performance art things, but just in the right spots. And those kind of those close-ups of like the steam and things that you wouldn't necessarily experience, from sitting 20, 30 feet away in the audience. So we were able to kind of bring the audience up close and into our world, which is, I think, was a really unique experience. And also with the Masquerada, the Alice Pinguijo cello and flamenco concerto, that was originally supposed to be for full orchestra, and we had to, due to capacity numbers, we had to change the plan. But I think it actually worked really well in that more intimate setting, and the flamenco dancer, due to the fact that we had to be spaced out, was able to weave her way between the players, and you get these cool aerial shots of her from above, dancing in between the musicians, which that probably wouldn't be able to happen in a traditional staging setting. And actually, we've been having some discussions about how exactly we would stage that in a live performance, because none of these, all of these 9 pieces that were part of Festival, they've been premiered, but they haven't been performed live. So I think it will be a really interesting experience to actually perform them for a live audience and see, what kinds of changes and tweaks we need to make in order for those same things to come across in a different context. As well, it afforded us the opportunity to showcase some really remarkable emerging composers alongside more established composers. So we had our composer incubator project that culminated at the end of the season, and normally this would have these 9 pieces would have been part of our whole year of programming, but because of the circumstances, we made it into a little mini festival. But I think that was it was definitely a learning experience for all of us to do that much recording in that short a period of time, and also have that mind for the production value, and not being able to make any edits. I mean, it's all straight through, because it was because of the nature of the video recording. So that was also an added pressure on the ensemble, of course, and the creative crew, that we had to get a lot of things on the first or second try.
Yeah,
just like a live performance.
Right. That's wonderful. Again, I mean, it's similar. You've kind of taken this challenge or this difficulty and flipped it on its head. It's and it's hilarious to think now it's like, well, the video version went so well. Now we got to think of the in person. I mean, I picture seeing one of these pieces again live, but then I'd be like, oh, I don't get to kind of roam among the ensemble like I did. But that is such a, and with interactive chamber music too, it's so cool to feel like you're inside it. Which is an experience that I thought really came across, at least. Yeah, that's great. Maybe we can talk a little bit more detail about some of the pieces and the composer, the mentorship program, where we had 6 premieres by 6 emerging female composers. There's really awesome stuff in each of them. Yeah, maybe I'll just go to Aaron and Louise now and talk a little bit as performers. Where there's some highlights, some challenges, both with this kind of reshaping of what Festival ended up being, or maybe some particular experiences that you really liked about the about being part of these premieres? I'll go with Erin first again, so we'll just keep the rotation.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, it was just such an amazing project to be part of, and then to sort of have, you know, it was very stressful to have to do the one take, the one run through. That was, you know, up there as far as like stressful times I've had. But yeah, I think just to see the result that that came out of that experience, and just how beautiful those films were of those pieces. It was very, I mean, the process was really fun. The rehearsals and the learning of the music and working it all out was great. And then to have that concrete thing, and that's not something you often get as a performer too, because once you perform, it's just out in the ether. But to have that something that still exists is really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I actually thought that each of the pieces stood on its own in terms of you know, the meaningful element. Each one sort of had a something important they were trying to express. But then I think that the way that the composers used both the music, but then also sort of visual elements that could be brought into the work. Holly Winter's piece with the graphic score was really cool, and that was neat how, I don't know if you saw that one, but that one, parts of the score were actually put onto the screen as we were playing. So there was sort of these ink blots that were quite an emotional element of the piece that were, the audience was able to see through that video project, which they wouldn't have been able to in a more traditional presentation. Marie Alice Conrad's piece was really moving and really fun, and such interesting sounds. It was sort of about dementia, and that was something that had affected her family. And so she brought in things like knitting needles on a ukulele, and measuring cups, cooking, you know, things that her, I think it was her grandmother had, like, she associated very much with her grandmother. So it was just, yeah, I mean, they're two pieces that I, you know, come to the top of my mind, but each piece was really special in its own right, and just such a wonderful process to bring it to fruition and have that video, and then hopefully in the future some more performance opportunities with the works.
Wonderful. Yeah. I think those both, as you said, I think I got so much out of each piece. But yeah, especially Holly Winters. That was one that I'd like to ask a bit more about too, back to Janna. But first I'll go to Louise. Just, yeah, same kind of question. You know, how was your festival performance experience?
Festival was a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, as Erin has touched upon, but it was also a lot of fun. I had the opportunity to play at some of the pieces by the emerging composers and also by their mentors as well. And what I like about it, and Erin's touched upon this, is that it's not just music. It is very much an immersive, visceral experience using all of your senses, not just audio. So there is a visual element to it. There's a physical element to it. Janna's already shared about the flamenco dancer, but there's also, with almost all of these pieces, I was able to hear sounds and sometimes create sounds that I had never done before, especially not in a traditional classical music kind of format, shall we say. And so what I loved about these pieces is that not only were they all unique, not only were they so personal to the composers in one way or another, but they allowed, at least for me as a musician performing it, the real chance to kind of experiment and to do things I don't normally do, which is always kind of fun, slightly unnerving. I'm like, oh, what will happen if I did this with my instrument? But it really allowed us as musicians to play, to experiment within the safe container that the composers had provided us. So that was a real treat as a musician, to actually kind of get out of the metaphorical box a little bit as well. One of my favorites was actually a piece written by one of the mentors. I will always remember this vividly. It was written by Alice Pingy Ho, and it involved a lot of ping pong balls. And to this day, I can't see or hear a ping pong ball being dropped without thinking of that marvelous piece. And that really was one where it is very visual as well as auditory, and using sounds and things that you would never normally think could work.
Awesome. That's so cool. Getting to I like what you're saying. And yeah, I just to correct you, that was the Rita. Sorry, Weta. Rita's ping pong balls. Right on.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's all good. Yeah. Awesome. I like how you see it as playing within a safe container. I mean, there's we're going on so many decades now of composers. I mean, well, composing is always sort of an experiment, but also playing with unusual sounds, bringing in objects, just experimenting with the form. It's great to see. I feel like we've arrived at a place, and certainly through the presentation that Allegra did of the programming, of just so many different approaches, but all kind of given equal weight and given equal conviction. Yeah, so that was great to see, and the way it was performed. And back to Janna, I mean, Louise and Aaron, you've both spoken about experimenting a bit as performers. Janna, I one that stood out for me is about your role as a conductor in Holly Winter's piece, I'm Post Her, where it became, for me, I mean, and everyone can have their own interpretation. I saw it as suddenly it becomes a bit of theater where the chamber ensemble is breaking down and criticisms are thrown around, and you're getting out and you're interacting and you're kind of taking on a role. I was wondering, is this something that you've done before? Is this something you've done before as a conductor, sort of experiment with your role, or was this a new thing? And just how did you feel about that, breaking that down?
Yeah, one of the things that I loved about that piece was I think Holly challenged each and every one of us in stepping outside of our comfort zone, and one of the things she invited us to do, in that there was one section where she was like, here are some suggested negative self-talk that I say to myself, but feel free to insert your own. And so as the more we lived with it, the more and more raw it got, and the more it was exhausting. Aaron can attest to this. It was exhausting to rehearse it. And it was like, for myself, I was like, how do we even rehearse this? Like, we just have to go into this dark place and then come out of it, and then and push the boundaries every time. And I kind of wish that we would have been able to take some of that raw footage from rehearsals, because it was just so real and so raw. And then of course in under the stress of recording and wearing masks and everything, some of that maybe got lost a little bit, but I still think the musicians did an amazing job. And it was interesting because Holly saw me as the conductor as kind of like the provocateur, I guess, and the kind of the person that walks around and causes people to second guess themselves, and causes people to think badly about themselves, and is as if you'll see me looking and walking up to the players and judging them, or saying things to them, or they're saying things to themselves after interacting with me. And so yeah, definitely that was something that I'd done kind of performance art and performative interactive pieces before, but not to that extent. That was definitely a very, very personal experience that I think all of us went on individually and collectively. And it was definitely uncomfortable. And when I first saw the score and first had these initial conversations with the composer, I was like, I don't even know if the players are going to do this. It was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Like, it was something that we all had to really make sure that we were creating a safe space. And then I also just had to really put it in the hands of the players and really trust them. And and it turned out completely differently than I ever would have imagined or thought. And yeah, it was we are we've been in discussions with the composer about how to remount that, and what that would look like, and how we could bring that across and execute it in the same kind of way that would be when you're doing things like this, you walk the line of really provoking the listener, or the observer, and what is appropriate, what is how do we as kind of artists that are bringing these things to the forefront, how do we bring that to audiences in a way that is respectful but at the same time thought-provoking?
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like a very kind of personal experience, like you said, individually. And every time, yeah, that could be an interesting thing to look forward at with that piece. You know, how is it? It's going to kind of sit different, depending on who's playing it, depending on what the dynamic is, depending on what the. But you know, it's just, and it's one of you know, many pieces that challenge performers and conductors alike. But yeah, it seems, given the social action, given some of the backstory of the orchestra, you know, coming out of an industry where, you know, you've been in a position of having that sort of self-doubt put on you. Now it's sort of like it must be a cathartic experience to sort of repurpose that and showcase it as a piece of art. So I thought that was particularly impressive. Yeah, awesome. On a note of kind of stepping outside of the pieces for a minute, maybe kind of getting into more of a personal kind of career note, I'd like to speak to kind of each of you about. It always fascinates me when people are musicians and they also have other pursuits. Aaron, I believe that you work in textiles. Did I get that right? Great. I just thought it was interesting to see your career as a musician, your career in textiles, doing, you know, having kind of two artistic pursuits in two very different mediums. I just thought it'd be interesting if you had any thoughts on how do you see your artistic practice? Do those overlap and intersect, or it's just totally different worlds for you?
Yeah, I definitely see them intersecting. So I think, you know, music and sewing design have always been my two passions. And I'm actually in the middle of a doctoral degree in violin performance right now. And I think when I was trying to come up with a thesis, I sort of desperately didn't want to pursue a lesser known work that maybe is lesser known for a reason. Like, I think that's, you know, a lot of what, you know, violin performance theses tend to be about. And so I sort of just, you know, wanted to be really authentic and true to myself. And so I proposed to do sort of a costuming of chamber music as my thesis work, as my thesis piece. And that was really, I don't know if you know about the SSHRC funding that's available in Canadian institutions, social sciences and humanities. But SSHRC ate up my proposal, and they, you know, I got funding for this project to do, it's actually to costume Verclair Tenacht. So I sort of freaked out, and then I went to fashion school because I thought, well, I need to like know how to do this properly if I'm gonna get money to do it. So that's my project I'm working on right now. But I do sort of foresee, and actually Janna and I in BAM, we did sort of a little bit of a costume element to our performance there. So that's been a really fun way to bring it to Allegra. And I've also styled the most recent Allegra photo shoot with some pieces that I made. And I think, yeah, I hope this is something that we can continue to expand, you know, as I develop my practice and as the orchestra develops as well. So to me, it's really exciting to see sort of, especially when you're talking about visual element and the fact that our culture is sort of so visual, that avenue of sort of bringing people into the performance, bringing people more vividly into the musical experience is really exciting to me.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, it's like presenting music, presenting costume. It's, yeah, I mean, the way you talk about it, it's, of course, like, it seems only natural. I think that's something that even sometimes in classical music people don't think enough about. It's like, well, at the end of the day, people are watching. Like, you know, like, what are we wearing? Where are we? You know, what is the overall? Because don't think they'll be closing, you know, they don't close their eyes and just listen. I mean, that's what the album is for, I suppose, after the fact. But, you know, you're all working in the live experience and the video experience. So that's really, and I think it's inspiring because I feel like I've met a lot of people, especially like through music school, who feel like they need to shed their other hobbies, their other interests to focus on music and to realize their goals. And especially, I mean, it should be the opposite. Like it should be that those extra things, that's what makes you unique. I think I heard something about like music about music can only get you so far. It's music about other things, you know. It's music about books or about a place in the world or an experience you had or something. So, you know, that's great. And Louise, I understand you work as a leadership coach, and I thought that was just another really cool, you know, same question to you. Do you see your musical training and your coaching, do you see them as overlapping, or are they kind of very different worlds for you?
Both. They're overlapping, but they're also very different worlds. It's funny, I was just talking to somebody yesterday about this, where they were asking me a question about leadership, primarily in the corporate world, but also I think their question was, okay, so how did you learn about leadership? When did you become interested? And my answer to that is I learned about leadership through playing in orchestras when I was a little girl. That was my first taste. And that remains to this day, shall we say, the best on the ground training, apart from doing jobs in the corporate world, which I have done for many years. What I learned in orchestra has clearly stayed with me forever. And things just such as how to listen to others, how to work together with others, how to be responsible for doing your own part, you know, making sure you practice, making sure you show up prepared, you know how your part goes, you know where you come in, you know what else is going on around you. And not only that, but I had the opportunity, even as a little kid, to sit in the concertmaster seat. And so that in itself came with additional responsibilities, which as a 14, 15-year-old, it's kind of like, oh, okay, all right, I'm responsible for a certain group of people and for a certain kind of experience in the orchestra. And so there's very much a tie between the leadership work that I do and my background as a musician, in that leadership really is pervasive in the music world in a very good way. And I think it allows us to really embrace what leadership means to us personally, and how we can bring that to make a difference, not just to the people we play with, but how we then collectively communicate our musical message and otherwise to our audience as well.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, and it's awesome. And it feels like it really goes both ways too. It's like music can enrich your other careers, your other hobbies, and then vice versa. Your hobbies enrich music. Yeah, that's awesome. I noticed we just got 10 minutes on the clock, so maybe just a final question to sort of wrap up, and I'll go back to Janna one more time. And a big thing with the Canadian League of Composers right now, and in providing this kind of interview series, and is just trying to reach out and appeal to young composers or people who might not even consider themselves composers, people working in music in different ways, but maybe seeing themselves as a bit of an outsider to the classical music world or certain music worlds, or might be, you know, they're making art, but maybe they don't see themselves as an artist. So would you have any advice based on your experiences for people who are full of art, full of things to give, but maybe feel like there are things holding them back?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think that the things that set the compositions from our composer incubator series apart so much to me were how uniquely personal they were, and how these composers were able to transform their own personal experiences, whether they be you know, positive, negative struggles, you know, every day, the mundane, the extraordinary. They were able to take those very personal experiences and make them into art, and, you know, in some cases, you know, transform those experiences and redeem those experiences, and you know, create new connections and greater understanding between you know, themselves and others, their communities and others, and perhaps even just the, you know, the working out of the creation of the piece of music, you know, was a learning and growing experience for them. And I think that you know, when I set out to do things that were uniquely me, and those were the things that terrified me the most, like launching Allegra, like launching my own projects. And every time I dream up another project, I'm always like terrified that this is the biggest disaster I've ever engineered. But those are the things that then I know I'm onto something. Then the more scared I am, that usually I'm more terrified, because it's another layer of me is being revealed, another kind of that's my most authentic voice coming out, and that's when things actually started to work. When I tried to go the more traditional route of working in an orchestra as a violinist, and pursuing those more traditional paths, which there was amazing experiences there too, but there was something beyond that I needed to do and needed to figure out. And once I started actually following those instincts, that's when things actually started to come together, and so things actually started to work, and then I had limitless energy to work on them. And so I guess what I look for in a collaborator and those that I work with is that kind of authenticity and willingness to be uniquely and unapologetically themselves.
Great. That's all. Yeah, that's awesome. I'll kind of the same question to Erin. Anything you'd like to add to that?
I love that. I think that's very much been my experience too, where when I'm not trying to do this route that is the conservatory and then the orchestra, and then, the things that are the traditional way of going through things. I mean, to a certain extent, I did do that, and I don't know that I ended up being very happy in that place. So I think that was sort of a wake-up call for me, that it's very important to find out what your role in the music world, or wherever you're working, what it happens to be, and to pursue that wholeheartedly. And it's such a treat to be surrounded by other women who are pursuing the same, and it's like it's a daily process to sort of uncover those things which are your path. But it's very exciting and wonderful to be in the presence of other women who are doing the same.
Okay, thanks, Erin. And Louise?
The coach in me is wanting to say so many things about so many things, but I love what Janna and Erin have already shared here about the bringing yourself to your performances, your compositions, your pieces. We touched earlier upon Erin's work with textiles, and one of the things that came to my mind was music is very much a form of self-expression, and so is the clothes we wear, so is the words and language we choose to say, so is the route we take to walk to our favorite park. It is a form of self-expression, and when composers, either experienced or novice composers, when they have the courage to really tap into what that means for them, like the bit that is, as Janna said, uniquely them, that is what we need more of in the world, is everybody expressing themselves in a way that feels right for them. And if we are able to showcase that, put it on a stage and have it reach eyeballs and eardrums, then I think our world will only be richer and more fulfilling in that sense, and it will inspire others to do the same. So if there's somebody reading this article or watching this video who's thinking, oh, I think I have a little piece inside me, how do I get it out? Get it out. Doesn't matter how you get it out, doesn't matter what it sounds like, even just allow it to come through, trust it, and it will evolve into something so meaningful and special for all of us.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much. Thanks so much, Louise. And thanks so much to all three of you. I think that's a great note to end on. So I'm going to hit stop on the recording.